الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه وذرياته وأهل بيته ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا. All praises to Allah, all praises to Allah, all praises to Allah who guided us to this, who guided us to Islam and to Iman, in this Mubarak house, in this Mubarak hour of this Mubarak day, and we were not to be guided. Was it not that Allah had guided us? O Allah, to you is praise that is commensurate with the majesty of your countenance and the greatness of your authority. O Allah, we do not limit you with any praise we can come up with ourselves, rather we admit that you are the only one who knows the true extent of your praiseworthiness. And may the peace and blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be upon his servant and messenger, our master Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. May the peace and blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be upon him and upon his noble companions and upon his pure wives and upon his Mubarak and blessed family and progeny and upon all of those who follow all of their way until the day of judgment. The deen is not easy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not make the path to Jannah easy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not make the practice of this deen easy. This deen is based on what? It's based on saying Allah and then making istiqamah. The Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was once asked, give me something that I can hold on to and it will be sufficient for me. And so the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says to him, قُلِ اللَّهَ, and in a different riwayah, قُلْ رَبِّي اللَّهِ, say Allah. And in a different narration, say, my Lord is Allah, ثُمَّ اسْتَقِمْ. Then be steadfast in this saying of yours, meaning let it apply to your life consistently, without any gap, without any hole, without any compromise, without relenting, without slowing down, without slackening, without changing, without deteriorating, without being sold out. ثُمَّ اسْتَقِمْ. Be upright and be consistent and be steadfast in this statement. And anybody who understands what the true reality and the true haqiqah and the true secret, the sir of the statement is, will know that to be mustaqim, to have istiqamah in the statement of, my Lord is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is something that is not easy. This is something that is not easy. And there is a number of tahrifat, there is a number of changes that have come into the text of Islam, into the text of the Quran and the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, not in language, not in words, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has protected the words of the Quran and protected the bulk of the words of the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam from being corrupted. But the tahrif will enter in what? Through meaning, through changing of meaning. This is the meaning of the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. If you look at the muhaddithin interpretation they give, that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says there will be a time that will come where people will make zina halal, and people will make drinking intoxicants halal, and they will make listening of musical instruments halal. The ulama say that this doesn't mean that you have a mufti who says, khalas, go and commit zina, it's okay. Go ahead and drink wine, it's okay. This is not what's meant by this hadith. What's meant by the hadith is that the nusus of the Quran, the text of the Quran are unequivocal, and they're going to be protected until the day of judgment. Rather, what you have is you have a generation of people who will name these sins by names other than their names, and then they will use these secondary names and they will say those things are halal. They're euphemisms. And the thing is that this is a precedent that we're all familiar with. Allah Ta'ala, He gives us the stories of Banu Israel and the stories of the Yahud and the Nasara in His book. Why? So we can make fun of them, so that we can mock them and jeer them and say, look how wonderful we are, and look how horrible those people are. That's not the point of telling those stories. In fact, the stories that are told in the Quran, those are people who are following the Islam of their time, the prophetic dispensation of their time. They're trying to make right with their Lord. But somewhere along the way, some of them went wrong, and the reason for recounting the stories of those people, the ones who were steadfast amongst them and the ones who went wrong amongst them, is in order to teach this ummah the mitzvah of the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that you will follow the people who came before you, hands breadth by hands breadth, to the point that if one of them went to a lizard hole, you would go into the same lizard hole just because they did it. And in the riwayah to the point where one of them went to go to his mother instead of fornication, one of you would have done it also because they did it. And note that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was very, very light and very modest in his speech. He wasn't excessive in his speech. And so there's very few hadiths you will find very harsh type wordings like this. The only reason the Prophet ﷺ will convey those wordings is because there is a necessary part of the deen which is being put forth that has to be explained because it's an amanah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Otherwise you'll see that the text of the Quran is very directive, very harsh in its pronouncement. Whereas the text of the hadith is very light and very latif in its pronouncement. And the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ is very kind and loving and humble and soft in the way that it conveys the deen, except for when hardness is needed. So you see this. This is what the people before us did. There was something called usury in the English language, which is considered to be a major sin by the Christians. And there is something called interest, which is identical to usury. They just change the name, and they say we don't practice usury, we take interest, etc., etc. So what is the tahrifat that comes by changing and by playing with the meanings of words? Because the actual changing of the words of the Quran is not possible, is that what the idea that the deen is supposed to be easy, and the deen is not easy. The deen is not easy. The deen is not easy. Read the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Read the seerah of the Anbiya alayhi salatu wa salam. Allah Ta'ala sent them to be exemplars and to be examples for mankind in how to rectify their relationship between themselves and between their Lord Jalla wa Ala. And you see that they went through great difficulties. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam went through great difficulties. It is the aqidah of the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, the people of guidance, that what? That the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum are the best of Allah Ta'ala's creation after the Anbiya alayhi salatu wa salam. That you see them going through great difficulty, you see them going through great sacrifices. You see people losing life and limb. You see people losing property. There are people that are from the Muhajirun, radiallahu ta'ala anhum. They were wealthy people and they were people of high status and nobility before Islam. And after they say La ilaha illallah, they will never be wealthy again. They will never experience comfort again. They will go to the day that they die in a state of difficulty and in a state of tribulation. If the deen was meant to be easy, and we say that these people are exemplars for the deen, if the deen is supposed to be easy, then what kind of example are they? What kind of example is the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? The Nabi alayhi salatu wa sallam was a very successful trader before the revelation of Iqra. From the time Iqra is revealed until the time that he dies, he is legally considered a miskin. He said that he has not enough money to get through his day and his night. He doesn't say anything. In fact, not only does he say that he, not only does he not say anything at all, his companions, he not only encourages them to not fear poverty. The Quran that was revealed upon him, it says not that shaitan will make you feel poverty. He will make you feel why by promising you poverty. Don't worry about the poverty. Do what you're supposed to do. Don't fear. Don't be a coward for the difficulty that will come in front of you. Why? Because every difficulty becomes easy with the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the first principle that we have to understand. Don't look for the Islam of ease out of your fear of difficulty. Rather, any prize or any goal that is worth attaining and is worth achieving is worth putting hard work and effort and worth making sacrifice for. If it's not worth working hard for it, and it's not worth making sacrifice for it, it's not worth having. And people will quote, they'll say, Sheikh, okay, this is a wonderful thesis that you put forward, but where's your dalil? Where's your dalil? Allah Ta'ala says in His book, وَمَا جَعَلَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجٍ. Allah Ta'ala has not placed for you any difficulty or hardship in the deen. This is not a complete ayah. This is a prime example of tahrif. That you're quoting the ayah in a context that it's not revealed in. Because this is not a complete ayah. This is not even the beginning of the ayah. What is the beginning of the ayah? وَجَاهِدُوا بِاللَّهِ حَقَّ جِهَادِهِ. Struggle in the path of Allah Ta'ala as it is His right that you struggle. It is the right of Allah Ta'ala, great or small. Allah Ta'ala's right is not only great, Allah Ta'ala's right exceeds all other rights. It envelops all other rights. All other rights that have legitimacy, the legitimacy is secondary. His legitimacy is primary. Every right your parents have, your teachers have, your elders have, the masjid has, the anbiya have, that justice has, that love has. All of these rights are secondary rights. They only are accorded legitimacy because Allah Ta'ala accords it legitimacy. Allah accords them legitimacy. His right is the primary right from which all other rights devolve. And what is His right? That you should struggle in His path as it is His right that you struggle. And then later on in the ayah, what does Allah Ta'ala say? وَمَا جَعَلَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجٍ. That Allah Ta'ala didn't make for you in the deen difficulty. Meaning what? Don't complain. Why? Because what's mentioned first is the asr. What's mentioned second is the tafriyah. The asr, the foundation of understanding is what? That you must struggle in the path of Allah Ta'ala as is His right to, that you should struggle. And what is the caveat? What is the modification? What is the extra information on top of that Allah is conveying in this ayah? That He didn't make anything difficult for you. You have no right to complain, I have no right to complain. Why? Because the struggle may be great, but the help is even greater. The struggle may be great, but the help is even greater, in as much as titanic and insurmountable, seemingly insurmountable, and seemingly impossible tasks, even if Allah were to assign them to us, if He gives us His help, the impossible becomes possible. The insurmountable becomes something that you can handle, something that you can tackle, something that you can achieve. And if you have doubt about that, if you think this is some sort of philosophy or pie in the sky type of discussion, then look over the history of the Prophet ﷺ, the Sahaba, the Tabi'een, the Sabra Tabi'een, the Ottoman Empire, Shaykh Usman Dan Fodio, the Harakat of Sayyid Ahmed Shahid. Look at how Islam entered into the archipelago of Southeast Asia. Look how Islam spread everywhere that it spread against completely insurmountable odds. How the Mongols overrun the entire Muslim homeland without any sort of like dream that this is something we'll ever recover from. Baghdad is sacked by a Mongol army. They say that they threw all of the books. Forget about filling the rivers with blood. Those people would have been dead by now anyway. What did they do? They filled the libraries of Baghdad in the river. So the river turned black from the ink of the books. The books that are written in the hands of the scribe of Imam Abu Hanifa, thrown in the river. The books that are written in the hands of the scribes of Imam Ahmad, thrown into the river. The books that are dictated from the lectures of Shah Abdul Qadir Jilani, thrown into the river. The books that are dictated from the lectures of Imam Junayd, thrown into the river. All of these things, all this Turaf, all of this living, many of the books, the only reason we know that they exist is because other books exist that sack of Baghdad. Historians say it wasn't the Mongols that threw the books in the river. The Mongols don't care about our books. The Mongols didn't care about our books. What was it? There was a contingent of Armenian soldiers that had a beef against the Muslims because of the suzerainty that they had in the Caucasus, and that the contingent of Armenians, they took a special side trip to the library, and out of spite they destroyed the libraries of the Muslims. This is something that's very important to note. Why? Because the Mongols, when they took over the Muslim heartland, they were mostly either Buddhists or Christians. And so the Christians in Europe thought, this is wonderful, this is great, this is a chance for us to have somebody else do our dirty work. We wanted to do this for a very long time, and this is someone else who's doing our dirty work, and they've already leveled all of the cities of Central Asia. They've leveled many of the cities of India. They're on the gates of Damascus. They've overthrew the caliphate. There's very few things left. The only thing that's left is to sack what? To sack Egypt. What happens from this time of complete desolate hopelessness, which is a political situation? I want people to understand this and appreciate this. The political hopelessness, the military hopelessness, the economic hopelessness, the social and cultural hopelessness that the Ummah is going through right now, it's not as bleak as it was at that time. That was something completely, it looked like it was over. Ibn al-Athir, the famous muhaddith and historian, he says when Baghdad fell, the Muslims thought there's no way that the capital of the Khilafah can fall. They thought this is it, they don't know if the Qiyamah is going to start any time now. People were so despondent. Ibn al-Athir, he says that I was in Baghdad when Baghdad was sacked. The Mongol soldiers, there were so few of them, and the Muslims were so despondent that they didn't want to fight against the Mongols. They had no himmah, no will, no courage to fight against the Mongols, that there were so many prisoners. One Mongol soldier would have 50 prisoners, and you would execute all of them one by one. They would stand in line for your turn, kill him. Your turn, kill him. Like this, one by one. So Ibn al-Athir writes that, I looked at the guy next to me and said, if we run away right now, do you think they could stop us or do anything to us? It's worth a try. So they just ran. The other guy has 48 other people to kill. You think he's going to chase after him? This is how despondent the Ummah was. It's how bad the situation was. But what? There were still people who had himmah, who had courage to move on. Not to be lazy, not to console themselves, not to feel sorry for themselves, but there were people who had this spirit that they moved on. This happened even in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. In the Battle of Uhud, what happened? The criers issued from the mushrikeen that we have killed Muhammad, that we have killed him, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And so some of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum believed this cry, and they believed this false piece of information. And so amongst those people, there are two groups. There was one group of people who sat down and said, our entire world is ended. What are we going to do without Rasulullah? What are we going to do without the help from Allah Ta'ala that comes with it? Without the guidance, without the love, without the treasure of His Sunnah, without the treasure of His company, without the barakah of His presence, what are we going to do? And another group that said, what? His job that he tasked us with was to stand and fight, was to stand and struggle in the path of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. And if he left this world, it doesn't mean that we're going to stop or slacken or even blink an eye. Even blink an eye is the process of moving forward. Both of them are beloved people from Allah Ta'ala. Both of them are beloved people from Allah Ta'ala. But Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala says, فَإِنَّا تَوَقُّتِلَ انْقَلَبْتُمْ عَلَىٰ أَعْقَابِكُمْ فَمَنْ يَنْقَلِبْ عَلَىٰ عَقِبَيْهِ فَلَنْ يَضُرَّ اللَّهَ شَيْئًا. If he dies, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, if he's killed, or if he dies, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, will you turn on your heels and run away? Anyone who turns on his heels and runs away, let them know that it doesn't harm Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala in the least. It doesn't harm him in the least. Brothers and sisters, the practice of this Islam cannot be successfully prosecuted by a coward. It cannot be successfully prosecuted by a lazy person. It requires somebody that has some sort of courage inside, some sort of motivation inside. It requires a person who has the strength that doesn't come from lifting weights, or the strength that doesn't come from running marathons, but the strength that comes from conviction inside that I will keep doing what I'm doing, and Allah will give me the hifzayn in the process. I will keep doing what I'm doing. Either Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala will crown my efforts by His fadl and by His rahmah, by His grace and by His mercy, with success in this world, or He will crown my efforts by rewarding me completely in the hereafter. And we have lived amongst the dunyawi people, we have lived amongst the materialistic people to the point that we've forgotten what it means to have success in the akhirah. Why? Because the company you keep is inevitably going to affect you. The Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam taught his Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum what? He taught them that the person who goes out as a mujahid fi sabilillah, qital is a superlative example of struggling against the nafs, that a person should go out and commit life and his property on the line in order that the word of Allah Ta'ala be made supreme. This is something that we shouldn't shudder from talking about. We're not talking about joining bizarre groups in parts of the Arab and Islamic world that may or may not have legitimate claims to whatever they claim. We're not talking about specific politics or specific groups. We're talking about the concept. It's talked about in the Quran at great length. It's talked about in the Hadith of the Prophet at great length, called jihad fi sabilillah. One of the manifestations of which is what? Even a martial struggle to make the word of Allah Ta'ala supreme. And this is a superlative struggle. Why? Because the person has nothing more to give than their life. They have nothing more to give than their wealth. That person who goes out and puts his life on the line, and puts his wealth on the line, so that the word of Allah Ta'ala can be supreme, that person, if he returns to his home with victory and with spoils from his struggle, with treasure from his struggle, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said in a hadith, he says that person will receive 2/3 of his reward in this dunya, and on the day of judgment he will only receive 1/3 of his reward for the struggle he went through. And the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum, they thought this was amazing. They said, Ya Rasulullah, how is this? This is what we thought jihad fi sabilillah is. How is he only receiving 1/3 of his reward in the hereafter? Who's the one who's going to get the full reward? Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said what? He said, Man uqira jawazuhu wa udrika januhu. The person who, when they go out, risk their life for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not only their blood spilled, even their horse is hamstrung, even their horse is cut down to pieces. They completely lose in this world. And what is the reward they'll receive? They'll receive the complete reward in the hereafter. This is something that you have to have as a vision. You have to internalize this inside. Not be afraid of difficulty. Not be afraid of failure. Not being afraid of failure in this world. Because failure and success comes to the believer in this world. There is no such thing as failure for the believer in the hereafter. There is no such thing as failure for the believer in the hereafter. And Allah knows best which one is better for the believer in this world. Allah knows best which one will give more benefit to the believer in this world. Should he fail or should he be successful? This is the choice that our forefathers, our salaf, may Allah Ta'ala be pleased with them. They used to leave this choice to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You do your job and let Allah Ta'ala do his job. وَمَا جَعَلَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْكُمْ فِي الدِّينِ مِنْ حَرَجٍ. He didn't make it difficult for you. You do your job and you let Allah Ta'ala do his job. People say, Shaykh, isn't there a hadith in Bukhari that says in the deen al-yusr? Verily indeed the deen is ease. Verily indeed the deen is ease. This is correct. This is a hadith in Sahih Bukhari or Kama Qala, paraphrase the hadith. Look in the Fath al-Bari. The Fath al-Bari is Hafiz ibn Hajar al-Asqalani's masterpiece, canonical commentary on Sahih Bukhari. The authoritative commentary on Sahih Bukhari. Because we don't interpret, every age doesn't come with new interpretations for the nusus of Islam, for the Quran and the Hadith. Rather, we accept the interpretation of the Salaf and the ulama that came before us. Hafiz ibn Hajar says in comments about this hadith, that this hadith means that the deen is easy when compared to the dispensations that came before us. Why when compared to the deen of the Yahud and the Nasara? That the Yahud, their Bani Israel, the prayers were not accepted except for inside the masjid. They couldn't pray at home. The Bani Israel, if they, najasa, ritual impurity fell on their clothing, they weren't allowed to wash it out. They could cut that part of the clothing out and throw it away and throw a patch on the clothes if they wanted to keep using it. The Bani Israel before us, there was certain sins, the kafara, the expiation for which is that you have to kill yourself. And there's nothing like that in our Sharia. Our Sharia is ease when compared to the Sharia before us. Hafiz ibn Hajar writes, and you can look in the Fath al-Bari, he says, as for the person who thinks in an absolute sense that this deen is easy, that person obviously has missed the boat. That person obviously doesn't know what they're talking about. It's obvious that this deen will require struggle from people. It's obvious that this deen will require struggle from people. Now, brothers and sisters, what's the point of bringing this topic up right now in this time and this place? I was told that this is a gathering that's of the young people. It's a gathering of the university. You see, I also graduated from the University of Washington in Seattle with a degree in biochemistry. I was also the president of our MSA. Our MSA also used to have a masjid that was walking distance from campus. This is something, this is a value, and this is a virtue, and this is a mindset that we have to accept and inculcate within us while there's still some struggle inside us to do, while there's still some youth while there's still some energy, while there's still some capacity to deal with difficulty, while there's still capacity to deal with heartbreak. Not when the body becomes old, or when the body becomes weak, or when a person is rocked with liabilities, and when they're worrying more about their children than they're worrying about themselves, etc., etc. This is a culture that we have to make. It will radicalize. It will change the way we look at this. It will change the way we look at halal and haram. It will change the way that we come to the masjid, the way that we work for the masjid, the way that we work for one another as members of this ummah. It will change the way that we deal with bad news, because this ummah is wrought with bad news. Every corner you turn to, it's bad news. You look at the news, it's bad news. Look at Facebook, bad news. Look at Twitter, it's bad news. It's bad news at home, and it's bad news abroad. It's completely depressing, except for the news that know who Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam are. Twitter, there's no place that you can see, does Allah like this tweet, or does His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam like this tweet. There's no place that you can see. If someone has a friend on Facebook, Allah Ta'ala, his account, al-a'la, the person Allah Ta'ala friends, it doesn't matter if they don't have any friends or followers on social media. That person is made in this world and they're made in the hereafter. This is a completely different way of looking at things. It's a complete shift in the way that you look at the deen and look at your practice of deen and look at your outlook to this life that you're going to live in this world. And if you honestly study the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the Book of Allah Ta'ala, the Seerah of the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the Seerah of the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala, you will see that there are people that were not cowards and they were not lazy people. Rather, there were people who were always ready, again and again to go back, again and again, until every last breath of life was spent from them. They were ready to serve and sacrifice in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if you read the nusus, you read the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Jahannam is, the hijab of Jahannam is what? Is desires. And the hijab of Jannah is what? Al-makalam, things people dislike, hard work, staying up at night, having to do without, watching other people enjoy while you're suffering. All of these things, you know the hijab of Jannah, right? Imagine a man marries a bride, and he goes to the wedding night and he sees the hijab, the veil in front of the face of the bride. And what is it? All of these wonderful things. And then you lift the veil from the face and you see this bride is so beautiful. This is Jannah. This is the thing that I always wanted. This is the time. This is the place that will last forever. I will never be hungry and thirsty again. I will never be disappointed again. I will never feel pain again. I will never be despondent again. This is what the beauty of that bride is. This is exactly the teaching of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Now, if you have one set of hadith that imply that things are difficult, and one set implies that things are hard. One set of ayat that implies things are difficult. حتى يقول الرسول والذين آمنوا معه مثل رسول الله. If you believe that there's one set that implies one thing and another set that implies another thing, أفلا يتدبرون القرآن ولو كان من عند غير الله ما وجدوا فيه اختلافا كثيرا. You do not ponder over the Quran and know that if it came from other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you would have found much discord in it. It wouldn't have stacked up. This idea that there's one set of ayat that say one thing and one set that say another thing, or the Quran is saying one thing and the hadith is saying another thing, this is like a very nuanced understanding of the deen. This is a very what you call a very amateurish look at the deen. What you have to see is there's a system. You have to see what every one of these ayat and hadith is. And you will see, if you look at the Sunnah in a holistic sense, it tells you that things are difficult. But you know what? It's not difficult. Why? Because nothing is difficult that Allah Ta'ala makes easy. And that also leads us to our final point that if you feel overwhelmed and you feel these things are difficult, rather than trying to make something that's difficult easy for yourself through your own means, why not turn to Allah Ta'ala and say, Ya Allah, you're the only one who can make this easy. You give the ni'mah, you give the strength, you give the tawfiq, you give the longevity, you give the endurance to make this thing possible that otherwise by their own means was impossible. And you will see that you make it possible for you like you make it impossible for our forefathers before us. ولله الحمد وصلى الله تعالى على رسوله سيدنا محمد وعلى اله وصحبه وسلم اجمعين. يقول رب تبارك وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: يا ايها الذين امنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن الا وانتم مسلمون. وصدق الله العظيم. واقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه انه هو الغفور الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على رسوله سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أجمعين. يقول الله تبارك وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله ولتنظر نفس ما قدمت لغد واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون. ولا تكونوا كالذين نسوا الله فأنساهم أنفسهم أولئك هم الفاسقون. ويقول تبارك وتعالى مخبرا عن مقام نبيه صلى الله عليه وسلم وشرفه صلى الله عليه وسلم وحقه علينا وامرا بذلك الحق حيث قال: ان الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا ايها الذين امنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى ال سيدنا محمد وعلى سيدنا محمد وعلى سيدنا محمد وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى ال سيدنا محمد كما صليت ورحمت وباركت على سيدنا ابراهيم وعلى ال سيدنا ابراهيم في العالمين انك حميد مجيد. اللهم ربنا اتنا في الدنيا حسنه وفي الاخره حسنه وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمه انك انت الوهاب. اللهم ربنا يسر علينا ولا تعسر. اللهم رب استر وارحمنا بخير راحمين. اللهم يا قاضي الحاجات اقضي حوائجنا وحوائج المؤمنين. اللهم يا شافي يا كافي اللهم اشفينا واشفي مرضى المسلمين. اللهم يا غني اكفنا بحلالك عن حرامك واغننا بفضلك عن من سواك. اللهم يا ربي اللهم انصر الاسلام والمسلمين في كل مكان والمجاهدين في سبيلك في كل مكان واحفظهم مستضعفين من المسلمين في كل مكان بفضلك وبرحمتك وبمنتك يا عزيز يا قدير يا حكيم يا ارحم الراحمين. اللهم ربنا تقبل منا انك انت السميع العليم وتب علينا انك انت التواب الرحيم. صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى اله وصحبه وسلم اجمعين. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون. وأقيموا الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. سبح اسم ربك الأعلى الذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى والذي أخرج المرعى فجعله غثاء أحوى. سنقرئك فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفى. ونيسرك لليسرى فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى سيذكر من يخشى ويتجنبها الأشقى الذي يصلى النار الكبرى ثم لا يموت فيها ولا يحيا. قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى. بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى. إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى صحف إبراهيم وموسى. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. هل أتاك حديث الغاشية وجوه يومئذ خاشعة عاملة ناصبة تصلى نارا حامية تسقى من عين آنية ليس لهم طعام إلا من ضريع لا يسمن ولا يغني من جوع وجوه يومئذ ناعمة لسعيها راضية في جنة عالية لا تسمع فيها لاغية فيها عين جارية فيها سرر مرفوعة وأكواب موضوعة ونمارق مصفوفة وزرابي مبثوثة أفلا ينظرون إلى الإبل كيف خلقت وإلى السماء كيف رفعت وإلى الجبال كيف نصبت وإلى الأرض كيف سطحت فذكر إنما أنت مذكر لست عليهم بمسيطر إلا من تولى وكفر فيعذبه الله العذاب الأكبر إن إلينا إيابهم ثم إن علينا حسابهم. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.